The night was quiet. The city outside was sleeping, and only the sound of the ticking clock filled the small apartment. Inside the dim room sat a young man, alone, staring at his computer screen. His name was Daniel, and his life had become a circle of silence and secrets. Every day he went to work, came back, ate alone, and slept alone. No one asked about him, and he asked about no one. But tonight was different. Tonight something strange was about to enter his life. Daniel had hired a maid service, not a normal one, but something he found in the corner of the internet. It was called Intergalactic Helpers Agency, a name so unusual that he thought it was just a joke. He laughed when he clicked on it, thinking it was some kind of game or scam. But the form was simple. Name, address, and type of help you wanted. He filled it out without thinking, just for fun, and pressed send. He never expected anyone would actually show up. When the doorbell rang the next evening, Daniel almost jumped from his chair. He opened the door, and there she was, a tall woman, wearing a plain uniform, carrying a small silver bag. Her eyes were the first thing he noticed. They were bright, almost glowing, not like contact lenses, not like human eyes at all. For a moment, Daniel felt frozen, but he quickly stepped aside, letting her in. "Good evening," she said in a soft, careful voice. "I am here for the cleaning service." Her accent was strange, not from any place he knew. Daniel nodded nervously. Yes, come in, please." He did not ask her name, and she did not offer one. She just walked inside, calm and quiet. From the very start, Daniel felt something different about her, the way she moved, the way she touched objects with careful hands. She looked at everything as if she was learning it for the first time. The books on his shelf, the pictures on the wall, the old guitar in the corner. Her eyes studied them with silent wonder. Daniel sat back down at his desk, pretending not to notice, but his heart beat faster. The evening passed slowly. She cleaned the kitchen, the living room, and the hallway. Every time she passed by him, Daniel felt a strange tension. She never smiled, never frowned, but her eyes held a weight, almost as if she knew more than she should, almost as if she had seen things far beyond his imagination. When she entered his small study room, Daniel quickly stood. "This room is fine," he said sharply, almost too quickly. The maid tilted her head, curious, but nodded and moved away. Daniel locked the door when she left. Inside that room was the one thing he never wanted anyone to see. The one thing he thought he could keep hidden forever. The night grew deeper, and Daniel kept watching her from the corner of his eye. She worked silently, never asking questions, never making noise, but once, when she thought he was not looking, he saw her hand glow faintly blue. Only for a second, only like a spark. Daniel's stomach tightened. He blinked, and when he looked again, her hand was normal. Had he imagined it, or was she hiding something too? By the time she finished, it was past midnight. She placed her silver bag on the table and looked at him for the first time in a long while. "Service complete," she said softly. Her voice had a calmness that almost felt heavy. Daniel swallowed and forced a smile. "Thank you." But in his mind, a storm of questions began. Who was she really? Why did her eyes glow like that? Why did she feel more like a visitor from another world than a maid? And most of all, what would happen if she ever discovered the truth about him? Daniel's secret was hidden in that locked study room, a secret that had nothing to do with housework, nothing to do with ordinary life. It was something he promised himself never to reveal, not to friends, not to family, and certainly not to a stranger. But fate has strange plans. Because the one person he never wanted to know, the one person he thought would leave quietly after cleaning, was the one who would soon open the door he tried so hard to keep shut. And when she did, her reaction would change everything. She would freeze, she would tremble, and she would realize the human in front of her was not so ordinary. And Daniel would realize the maid he hired was not human at all. The night was only beginning, and the secret was waiting. The strange beginning had just started, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning felt different. Daniel woke up earlier than usual, his mind restless. He could not stop thinking about the strange woman who had entered his life the night before. Her glowing eyes, her quiet steps, her strange way of studying everything. She was not a normal maid. He was sure of it. But who was she really? And why did she come to him? When Daniel went to the kitchen, he found her already there. She was cleaning the counter, moving her hands with slow and perfect care. It was as if every movement had been calculated, like a machine following a hidden pattern, but her face looked calm, almost empty. She did not look up until he cleared his throat. "Good morning," Daniel said awkwardly. "Good morning," she replied in the same soft tone, without emotion. Daniel sat at the table watching her closely. There was no sound except the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint scrape of a sponge. For a moment, it felt like time itself had slowed. Finally, Daniel asked, "What is your name?" She paused as if she had not expected the question. Her eyes shifted, glowing faintly before returning to normal. "You can call me Lyra," she said at last. Lyra, a name that sounded too beautiful, too alien to be ordinary. Lyra continued, her work in silence, but Daniel's curiosity grew heavier. He wanted to ask her about her eyes, about the way her hand had glowed, but his own secret chained his tongue. If he questioned her, she might question him, and he could not risk anyone learning what he kept locked away in his study room. Still, Lyra seemed to sense something every time she passed by him. She slowed, as if trying to read his face. Her eyes lingered longer than they should. Her movements stopped for just a moment too long. Daniel shifted in his seat, feeling exposed. He wondered if she already knew more than she showed later in the day. Daniel left for work, but his thoughts were not on his job. They were trapped in the memory of her glowing hand. He sat at his desk in the office typing numbers, yet his mind kept replaying the moment. Had he imagined it, or had she slipped? If she was not human, then what was she doing here? And why? Did she look at him as if she was studying something important? When he returned home, the apartment was spotless. The books on his shelf were neatly arranged, the windows shining, the floor free of dust. But there was something else. His guitar. In the corner had been moved slightly. A small frame on the wall had been turned just a little, and the door to his study room. It was still locked, but he felt like someone had touched the handle. Daniel's heart raced. Had Lyra tried to go inside? At dinner, Daniel decided to test her. He cooked simple pasta and set 2 plates on the table. When Lyra sat down, she picked up the fork strangely, holding it in an awkward way. It was clear she had never eaten this way before. Daniel pretended not to notice, but inside his suspicion grew. She chewed slowly, as if learning how to copy human behavior. Finally, she looked at him and said, "Humans are interesting." The words were soft, almost whispered, but they struck Daniel like lightning. "Humans?" he asked, trying to sound casual. She blinked, realizing her mistake. "I mean, people," she corrected quickly, lowering her head. Daniel smiled faintly, but inside his thoughts screamed. She had slipped again. She was not human. But why was she here, and what did she want from him? That night, after she went to her small guest room, Daniel sat alone in the living room. He turned off the lights and stared into the darkness. His mind was a storm of fear and questions. He thought about opening the study room, checking if anything had been touched, but part of him was too afraid. If Lyra had seen what was inside, then everything would change. And if she had not seen it yet, then it was only a matter of time. As Daniel sat there, he heard a faint sound. Not footsteps, not cleaning, but something else. A soft humming, almost like a song, but not in any language he knew. He stood quietly and walked toward the sound. It came from Lyra's room, her voice low and strange. The melody was haunting, filled with sorrow and beauty. Daniel leaned against the wall, listening, his chest heavy. He realized she was not just a maid. She was something far more complicated, something carrying secrets of her own. And in that moment, Daniel understood something important. He was not the only one hiding. She had her secrets just as he had his, and sooner or later their secrets would crash into each other. When that happened, neither of them would remain the same. The night passed slowly. and Daniel finally returned to his bed. He lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. His heart told him danger was coming. His mind told him curiosity was growing, too strong. And in the shadows of the quiet apartment, two lives, one human and one alien, waited for the moment when truth could no longer be locked away. Daniel's study room was the one place he never allowed anyone to enter. It was small, dark, and always locked. To the outside, it looked like just another messy office, a space filled with papers and boxes. But inside, it held the truth he had carried for years. A truth that kept him awake at night. A truth he both loved and feared. When Daniel was only 12, his father had given him something strange. It was not a toy, not a book, but a small black box with silver lines across its surface. "This is not from our world," his father had whispered. "Protect it, never show anyone." And then, before Daniel could ask questions, his father disappeared. The boy grew up without him, but the box remained. Daniel never understood how his father had found it, but he knew it was not human. It pulsed with light sometimes, it hummed like a heart, and when Daniel touched it, it reacted to his emotions. Over the years, Daniel became addicted to it. At night, he would unlock the room, sit in the dark, and place the box on the table. He would stare at it for hours, whispering his secrets to it. Sometimes the box glowed softly as if listening. Other times it released faint images in the air, shapes of stars, fragments of voices, broken memories. Daniel never told anyone, not even his closest childhood friends. The box was his secret, his burden, and his comfort. But now, with Lyra living under the same roof, his fear had doubled. What if she saw it? What if she understood it? And what if she wanted it? He had no idea what she really was. But he knew she was not ordinary. And if she was connected to the box in any way, his life would change forever. That night, when the apartment was silent, Daniel unlocked the study. He lit only a small lamp, enough to see the box on the wooden desk. He placed his hand on it, feeling the familiar warmth spread through his skin. The silver lines on the box lit up, glowing like veins. The soft hum filled the air, calming and terrifying at the same time. Daniel whispered, "You're the only one who listens." The box responded with a faint vibration, almost like a heartbeat. Tears filled his eyes, loneliness pressing heavy on his chest. It was his ritual, his hidden habit, his strange bond with something not of this earth, but he did not know that. Outside the locked door, Lyra stood quietly in the hallway, her glowing eyes staring at the wooden barrier between them. Her head tilted as if she could hear the hum. Her lips moved, whispering words in a language not meant for humans, and for the first time, a flicker of fear appeared in her eyes. Inside the room, Daniel leaned closer. The box released a faint projection, stars spinning in the air. A broken voice echoed softly, "Find the key." Daniel froze, his breath caught in his throat. The box had never spoken clearly before. His fingers trembled as he whispered, "What key? What do you mean?" But the light dimmed, the stars faded, and the hum fell silent. Daniel sat back, frustrated and confused. Every night he hoped for answers, but all he got were fragments. Still, it was enough to keep him addicted, enough to keep him coming back. In her room, Lyra sat on her bed, her silver bag beside her. She opened it slowly, revealing small glowing stones and strange metal tools. She took one stone in her hand and her eyes glowed brighter. She whispered again, "The signal. It is here." Her hands shook, something rare for her kind, because she knew what Daniel had hidden in that room, and she knew her mission was about to collide with his secret. The next morning, Daniel tried to act normal. He made coffee, sat at the table, and opened the newspaper, but his eyes kept drifting to Lyra. She was cleaning again, but slower this time, her attention divided. At one point, she looked straight at him and said, "You stayed up late?" Daniel's hand froze on his cup. "How do you know that?" he asked carefully. She smiled faintly, the first smile he had ever seen on her face. "Your eyes are tired," she said simply, and returned to her work. But Daniel knew she meant more, much more. That night, Daniel told himself he would not open the box. He would not feed the habit, not when she was so close. But when the clock struck midnight, he found himself unlocking the door anyway. The hum greeted him like an old friend. His chest ached with both guilt and relief. He sat, staring at the glowing lines, whispering softly, "Why can't I stop? Why can't I let you go?" And outside, in the dark hallway, Lyra stood again. Her hand rested on the door, her body trembling. She whispered to herself, "Human, why do you have it?" Her mission was clear, her duty was simple. But her heart, strange and conflicted, was beginning to change. Because every night she watched him, and every night she realized something she had never understood before. Humans were not weak. They were not simple. They carried secrets. They carried pain. And sometimes their hidden habits revealed more power than any alien technology could measure. The night deepened. The hum continued. And two secrets, one locked in a box and one locked in an alien heart, moved closer to colliding. The story was no longer just about a maid and her employer. It was about two lives tied together by fate. And soon, one mistake would open the door that neither of them could close again. The night was quiet again, but Daniel's heart was not. He sat in his study room, the black box glowing faintly on the desk. The silver lines pulsed with light, filling the room with an otherworldly hum. Daniel leaned closer, whispering softly as if the box could hear him. "You know my secrets, don't you? You're the only one who listens." His eyes were tired, but his hands trembled with excitement. Every night the box drew him in, and every night he promised. It would be the last, but he could never stop, not when the glow felt like it was alive. The projection appeared again, stars flickering above the box. This time the broken voice echoed clearer than before. "Key. Find the key. Danger. Close." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He leaned forward, desperate to hear more. "What key? What danger? Tell me," he whispered sharply. But the light flickered, then dimmed, and the voice faded. Daniel slammed his fist on the table in frustration. The box fell silent, leaving only the heavy hum in the air. What Daniel did not know was that outside the locked door, Lyra was standing once again. She pressed her ear against the wood, her glowing eyes narrowing. She could feel the pulse of the box, the familiar energy of her people's lost technology. Her chest tightened. Her mission screamed at her to act, but her heart hesitated, because she had begun to see the human not as a target, but as something else. Someone who carried pain, someone who was fighting loneliness. Still, she could not deny it any longer. The object in that room belonged to her world, and the moment she saw it, everything would change. Inside, Daniel sighed and rubbed his face. The clock showed almost 2 a.m. He told himself to stop, to lock the box away again. But just as he reached for the lid, the door behind him creaked. Daniel froze, his blood running cold. He had locked the door, he was sure of it. Slowly he turned his head, and there she was. Lyra stood in the doorway, her figure framed by the dim hallway light. Her eyes glowed brighter than ever, wide with shock. She did not move, she did not breathe, she simply froze, her gaze locked on the black box glowing on the table. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest, his throat dry. How did you get in here?" he stammered. But Lyra did not answer, her body stiff like a statue. Her hands trembled slightly. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but could not. For a long moment, silence filled the room. The hum of the box was the only sound. Daniel quickly stood, moving to cover the box with his hands. "You weren't supposed to see this," he whispered harshly. But the words felt powerless. Lyra finally took one step forward, her eyes never leaving the box. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Where did you get that?" Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to lie, to push her out. But something in her voice stopped him. It was not anger. It was fear. "My father gave it to me," Daniel said quietly. Her head jerked up, shock flooding her face. Your father. Impossible, she whispered. Daniel frowned. What do you mean impossible? But Lyra did not answer. Her eyes returned to the box. She took another slow step, then another, until she stood close to the desk. Her hand lifted as if pulled by instinct, glowing faintly blue again. The box responded immediately, its hum growing louder, its light brighter. Daniel gasped. No, don't touch it. But it was too late. Lyra's fingers brushed the surface and the box came alive. The silver lines blazed with light. The projection burst into the air. Stars, galaxies, and symbols Daniel had never seen filled the room. The broken voice now screamed clear words. Warning! Stolen! Danger coming! Daniel stumbled back, shielding his eyes. Lyra stood frozen, her face pale, her body trembling. She whispered in her alien tongue, words Daniel could not understand. The box glowed brighter, then suddenly dimmed. Collapsing, back into silence, the room fell quiet again, but the silence was heavier than ever. Daniel and Lyra stood facing each other, both breathing hard. You knew, Daniel whispered, his voice shaking. You knew what this was all along. Lyra shook her head slowly, her eyes wet with something close to tears. I did not know it was here. Not with you. Not like this, she whispered back. Her voice cracked with conflict. Daniel clenched his fists, anger mixing with fear. Then tell me, what is it? Why does it call to you? Why does it speak of danger? Hera lowered her head, her voice barely audible. It is not just a box human, it is a beacon. Her words sent chills through Daniel's spine. A beacon for who? He asked, his voice breaking. Lyra's eyes lifted, glowing brighter. For them, she whispered, her voice shaking with dread. For the ones who will come looking, for the ones who will not stop until it is returned. Daniel's chest felt heavy. His heart thundered against his ribs. His secret was no longer his. The one thing he had hidden for years was now exposed, and the person who had discovered it was not even human. He stared at her, fear and anger mixing in his eyes. What are you? He whispered at last. Lyra trembled, her voice soft but certain. I am not your maid, Daniel. I am something far more dangerous. The weight of her. Words filled the room, and Daniel knew in that moment that nothing would ever be the same again. Daniel stood frozen, the echo of her words still hanging in the room. I am not your maid, Daniel. I am something far more dangerous, Lyra had said. His heart raced, his throat dry, his eyes locked on hers. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, but no sound came. The black box on the desk glowed faintly, as if waiting for the truth to be spoken. Finally, Daniel whispered, Then who are you? What are you? Lyra's lips trembled, her glowing eyes softening with conflict. She stepped back, as if afraid of her own confession. I am Lyra, from the Astrian people, she said quietly. Her voice carried both pride and sorrow. We are travelers of the stars, watchers of forgotten worlds, guardians of lost technology. Her gaze shifted to the box, her hands shaking. And that is ours. It should not be in your hands. Daniel clenched his fists, anger rising. My father gave it to me, he snapped. He told me to protect it. He told me never to show anyone, and now you tell me it belongs to you. Lyra closed, her eyes, her voice breaking. Your father should never have had it. Humans were never meant to hold such power. Her words cut through Daniel's heart. He thought of his father, of the last night he had seen him. Was it all a lie? Had his father stolen this strange object? Daniel shook his head fiercely. No, you're wrong. He wasn't a thief. He was just trying to keep me safe. Lyra's eyes softened, her expression torn. Perhaps, she whispered. But now it is too late, because once it is awakened, it cannot be hidden again. Daniel frowned. Awakened. Lyra nodded, slowly. Yes, the box is a beacon. It sends signals across the stars, and soon, others will come looking. The words made Daniel's stomach twist. Others, he repeated, fear crawling into his voice. Lyra's gaze darkened. Hunters, collectors, those who do not care about life, only power. They will follow the signal, and they will not stop until they find it. Daniel stepped back, his hands shaking as he looked at the box. For years it had been his secret companion, a source of mystery and comfort. But now, it felt like a curse, a weight pulling danger into his home. Then, take it, Daniel said suddenly, his voice sharp. Take it and leave. If it belongs to you, then go. I never wanted this. I never asked for this. But Lyra did not move. She looked at him with sorrow. If I take it, they will still come. They have already locked onto the signal, and now they know where it is, where you are. Daniel's chest tightened. So you're saying I'm trapped? Lyra nodded slowly, her voice heavy. Yes, unless we face it together. Her words made him freeze. Together. Why together? Why would she help him? He looked at her suspiciously, his voice sharp. Why should I trust you? You've been lying to me since the day you arrived. You pretended to be a maid. You hid who you really are. Lyra lowered her head, shame flashing across her face. I had no choice, she whispered. My mission was to search, to observe, to recover what was lost, but then I met you. She looked up, her glowing eyes filled with something Daniel had not expected, pain. You were different, not greedy, not cruel. You treated me like I was real, not a tool, not a servant. That is why I stayed silent. Daniel's chest ached at her words. He wanted to stay angry, but her voice carried truth. He remembered the way she looked at the guitar, at the pictures, at the little details of his life. She had not just been cleaning, she had been learning, watching, trying to understand. He swallowed hard, his voice softer now. So, all this time you were here for the box? Lyra nodded. Yes, but now I am here for more than that. Silence filled the room again, heavy but different this time. Daniel turned to the box, its glow fading as if it too was listening. He whispered, What is it really? Tell me everything. No more half-truths. Lyra stepped closer, her voice steady but low. It is called the Astra Key, she explained. A fragment of ancient power, a map and a signal, created long before my people even walked the stars. Her eyes glowed brighter. It does not belong to one person or one world. It belongs to the universe itself, and in the wrong hands, it could destroy everything. Daniel's breath shook, his body trembling. He remembered the nights he whispered his secrets to the box, the nights it glowed like it understood him, and now he realized he had been speaking to something far greater than himself. He looked at Lyra, his voice breaking. Then why didn't it reject me? Why did it respond to me? Lyra hesitated, her voice soft. Because it chooses, Daniel. It responds to those with a certain heart, a certain pain. It listens to those who need to be heard. The weight of her words struck Daniel deeply. All his loneliness, all his grief, it had been seen. It had been heard, not by a human, but by this strange piece of alien power. He sank into his chair, covering his face with his hands. I never asked for this, he whispered, tears burning his eyes. Lyra knelt beside him, her voice gentle. No one asks for destiny, but sometimes destiny asks for us. The room grew quiet once more, but it was no longer the silence of secrets. It was the silence of truth, heavy and unshakable. Daniel lifted his head, his eyes red but determined. If what you say is true, then they're coming for me, aren't they? Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, and they will not stop. Daniel clenched his fists, fear and courage mixing in his heart. Then we face them together, he said firmly. Lyra's eyes softened, and for the first time she smiled, a true smile, filled with both sorrow and hope. And in that fragile moment, the human and the alien were no longer strangers. They were allies bound by a secret, and by a coming storm that neither could escape. The apartment felt different after the truth was spoken. Daniel could still hear Lyra's words in his head. It is a beacon, and they are coming. He sat in the living room, his hands shaking, his heart heavy. The black box rested on the table between them, silent now, but full of secrets. Lyra sat across from him, her glowing eyes softer than before. For the first time, Daniel saw not just an alien, but someone carrying a weight as heavy as his own. Hours passed in silence, until Daniel finally whispered, "Why me?" Lyra tilted her head. "What do you mean? Why would this Astraki respond to me?" Daniel asked, his voice raw. "I'm nobody. I'm just a man who works, eats, and sleeps alone. My father left. My friends forgot me. I'm not special." His words cracked as he lowered his gaze. Lyra's expression shifted, her voice calm but firm. "You are wrong, Daniel. You are more than you believe." Daniel gave a bitter laugh. "That's easy for you to say. You don't know what it's like, living in silence every day, pretending you're fine when you're breaking inside." Lyra's glowing eyes dimmed as if shadowed by memories. "Do you think I do not know silence?" she asked softly. "My life has been silence. I walk among humans as if I belong, but I cannot tell them who I am. I cannot show them my true self. I hide every part of me, every second of every day." Her voice trembled, the first crack in her carefully controlled tone. "For years I have lived like a shadow, Daniel. Always watching, never belonging." Daniel looked at her, surprised by the emotion in her words. You feel it too," he whispered. Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes. Loneliness is not only a human pain. It belongs to anyone who is different, anyone who cannot be understood." For a long moment neither spoke, but the silence between them was no longer empty. It was heavy with unspoken truths. Two souls, one human and one alien, both carrying wounds of solitude, sat together like broken mirrors reflecting each other. Finally, Daniel leaned forward, his voice steadier. "So what happens now? If this beacon keeps calling, what do we do?" Lyra took a deep breath, her hands folding together. "We prepare," she said firmly. "They will come. They always do. But this time, I will not let them take what they want." Her voice grew sharper, filled with something Daniel had not heard before, defiance. "I have followed orders all my life, obeyed without question, but no more. Not here. Not with you." Daniel studied her face. There was strength there, but also fear. He whispered, "You're risking everything for me." "Why?" Lyra's glowing eyes locked on his, and for a moment, they softened in a way that made his chest ache. "Because you showed me something I had forgotten," she said gently. "You showed me humanity, the ability to care even when broken, the courage to hold on even when alone. My people see humans as weak, but I see something else. I see a strength that even the stars cannot hide." Daniel felt his throat tighten, his anger and fear slowly mixing with something warmer. For years, he had lived as if invisible, and now here was someone, not even human, telling him he mattered. He clenched his fists, then released them, his voice low but steady. "Then we faced them together." Lyra's lips curved into the faintest smile, fragile but real. "Yes," she whispered. "Together." The night deepened, but neither of them slept. They talked quietly, voices breaking the silence that had once ruled Daniel's life. He told her about his father, about the day he disappeared, about how the box became the only thing left of him. Lyra listened, her eyes glowing, faintly, her face soft with understanding. Then she spoke of her world, of the Astran skies filled with twin suns, of her training as a watcher, learning to live unnoticed among other species. Her voice carried both pride and sorrow, and Daniel realized she was just as trapped as he had been, only in a different kind of cage. At one point, Daniel asked, "Do you miss home?" Lyra looked away, her voice almost a whisper. "Every day, but even if I return, I will never truly belong. I am changed now. I am not fully Astran anymore. I am not fully human either. I stand between worlds." Her words cut deep into Daniel's heart because he understood. He too had lived between worlds, the world of ordinary people and the world of his secret, never fitting in either, never fully belonging. The more they spoke, the more the wall between them broke, and something new began to grow, fragile but strong, an understanding, a bond born from pain and truth. For the first time in years, Daniel felt less alone, and for the first time in her mission, Lyra felt seen. As dawn began to creep into the sky, the box pulsed faintly on the table. Neither of them moved. They simply stared at it. The light was no longer frightening, not while they sat side by side. Daniel whispered, "If they come, we fight." Lyra nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, we fight, not as alien and human, but as two souls standing against the darkness." The silence that followed was not empty this time. It was full of promise, full of strength. The bond between them had been forged in fire and fear, but it was real, unshakable. And though danger was coming fast, Daniel and Lyra were no longer alone. They had each other, and that was a power neither had known before. The sky above the city was darker than usual. Daniel stood by the window, staring at the silent night. Lyra was beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the horizon. The black box pulsed faintly on the table behind them, its hum stronger now. "They are close," Lyra whispered. Her voice heavy with dread. Daniel's chest tightened, his hands clenching into fists. This was no longer a secret game with a mysterious box. This was a battle waiting to begin. A sudden vibration shook the air. Daniel flinched, while Lyra remained. Still, she closed her eyes and whispered, "They have entered the atmosphere." Daniel's heart thundered, his mind racing. He was just a man, not a soldier, not a hero. How could he stand against something from the stars? But when he looked at Lyra, he saw both fear and trust in her face, and deep inside something stirred in him. The same something that had kept him alive through years of loneliness. The same something that made the box choose him. Minutes later, the lights in the apartment flickered. The air grew heavy, filled with a low hum that was not from the box. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him back from the window. "They are here," she said sharply. Daniel's throat went dry, but he nodded. He could feel it too, an unnatural presence surrounding them. The apartment trembled as if the building itself feared what was arriving. Then the shadows came. 3 figures appeared in the doorway without sound, their shapes tall and twisted, their skin dark like stone but alive with glowing veins. Their eyes burned red, sharp and merciless. Daniel froze, every muscle locked in terror. But Lyra stepped forward, her glowing hands raised. Her voice rang out in her alien tongue, commanding them to stop. They paused for a moment, tilting their heads, then one stepped forward. His voice was deep and cold. "The Astrokey. Return it or perish." Daniel's knees shook, but Lyra stood firm. "You cannot have it," she said, her voice shaking but strong. The alien's red eyes narrowed. "You betray your kind for a human." Lyra's jaw tightened. "I do not betray, I choose, and I choose to stand with him." Daniel's chest burned with both fear and pride. She had chosen him, not out of duty, but out of bond. The leader raised his hand, energy crackling in his palm. Lyra raised her own, blue light sparking. The room filled with power, the walls vibrating. Daniel's heart screamed at him to run, but his feet did not move. He could not abandon her, not now. And then the box pulsed brighter, louder, calling to him. Daniel turned, staring at it. The silver lines glowed fiercely, the hum shaking the air. He felt it pulling him, as if it knew the time had come. Without thinking, Daniel reached out and placed his hands on the box. The glow exploded, filling the room with blinding light. Lyra gasped, the aliens hissed, and suddenly Daniel was not in the apartment anymore. His mind was somewhere else, floating among stars, surrounded by voices. The voices whispered, "Human heart, human courage, you are chosen." Daniel's chest swelled, his fear melting into something else. He saw flashes of his father, of nights spent in silence, of every tear shed in loneliness. And he realized this was why the box had chosen him, not because he was powerful, not because he was strong, but because he had endured, because he had carried pain and still stood. When the light faded, Daniel opened his eyes. The box was in his hands, glowing like a sun. The aliens stepped back, shielding themselves from its power. Lyra stared at him in awe, her voice trembling. You activated it." Daniel's voice was steady now, no longer shaking. "I don't know how, but it listens to me." The leader roared in fury, charging forward. Daniel raised the box instinctively, and a wave of energy burst out. The alien was thrown across the room, crashing into the wall. The others hissed, retreating in fear. Daniel's arms shook from the force, but he stood firm. The box pulsed again, as if sharing its strength with him. Lyra moved to his side, her glowing hands ready. Together they faced the intruders. The aliens hissed one last time before retreating into the shadows, their voices echoing, "This is not over, human. The stars will not forget." And then they were gone. The apartment fell silent, the heavy air lifting slowly. Daniel collapsed into the chair, breathing hard. The box dimmed, resting quietly as if nothing had happened. Lyra knelt beside him, her glowing eyes wide with wonder. "You did it," she whispered. "You stood against them, a human stood against them." Daniel laughed weakly, his chest still burning. "I'm no hero," he said softly. "I was just scared." Lyra shook her head, her voice gentle but certain. "No, that is why you are special. You fear, yet you still fight. That is the strength humans carry, the strength no machine, no alien can ever copy." Her words sank into Daniel's heart. For the first time, he felt more than just a lonely man. He felt seen. He felt powerful in a way he never imagined. He looked at her, his voice quiet, but firm. "So what now?" Lyra's glowing eyes softened, a faint smile on her lips. "Now we wait, now we prepare, because this is only the beginning." Daniel glanced at the box, its faint hum echoing like a heartbeat. His life was no longer simple, no longer silent. The storm was coming, but he was no longer alone. Together with Lyra, he would face it. And as the first light of dawn touched the sky, Daniel whispered to himself, "This is humanity. This is what it means to fight, even when the universe says you cannot." The box pulsed once more, as if agreeing, and the human victory had only just begun.